Bubba Wallace here from 2311 Racing. Funny thing about being fast, you end up waiting a lot. First to show up, first in line, then just waiting. Me, I rev up Chumba Casino. With over 200 social casino games, no slow lanes here. Why sit around when you can spin? I'm already racing. Your turn. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of Bruins Tape to Tape. I'm your host today, Karoline with a K, and I am joined by my lovely co-host, Maria from Watertown. Hey, Maria.
Hey, Karoline. I love that you're introducing yourself now as Karoline with a K.
I know. I feel like I keep forgetting to say that, and you can clearly see that on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. So, yeah, well, welcome in. It's the quite literal dog days of summer. It's really disgusting out there. If you live in the Northeast, you're dealing with Canadian wildfire smoke and the corn sweat and God knows what else. It's August and we're just dreaming of cooler weather.
God, I would give anything to be sitting in a rink right now. It has been a steamy, soupy summer in the New England area here. So, yeah.
Yep. Well, I'm keeping cool. I've got my little tape cup with
Shameless
my lemonade.
Plug, folks. Yep.
Shameless you got plugs. Yours.
We've got our glasses. Yep. Cold drinks, hot takes, folks.
So you should definitely go check out our merch shop. And today we're kicking off the player profiles series that we've been doing for, well, at least since last summer. So it is now our summer tradition. It's what we're doing in August. And before we dive into the new folks, we are actually circling back and talking about one player in particular that we felt like we didn't close the book on him quite yet for last season. He was I'm going to say controversial acquisition at the free agency signing opening day last season, Nikita Zadorov. It seemed like folks either loved the pickup, hated the pickup, were confused by the pickup, and then those feelings kind of continued throughout the season. I certainly was confused by the pickup at the start because while I knew we had to get rid of Matt Grzelcyk because of his size and the changing, landscape of how hockey is played in the NHL, didn't really think though acquiring defensemen was a huge priority. But I'm not Don Sweeney. So, and then as the season went on,
I am glad you were not Don Sweeney because I don't think I could do a podcast with them without wanting to maybe punch him in the face on an occasion or two. But
very fair, very fair. And then, for me during the season, I really wanted to like him. I didn't want to go down the road that I think a lot of fans, rightly so, just kind of give up and write him off and say, man, he's just a terrible acquisition. He doesn't do anything. He just gets us in trouble. It costs us goals and things. And then my opinion changed after the trade deadline. But I want to hear from you, Maria, what your initial thoughts were. At the time that he was acquired, we did a podcast about him. So I encourage everyone to listen to that one again, because I definitely listened to it again before we chatted. What were your thoughts and pre, during, and post season for him?
Well, I'm pretty sure that I was on record as saying at the time of the signing that I was good with the signing. Mm-hmm. And dare I say, I might have even been a little bit excited about the signing.
You were?
Yes. See, my memory isn't totally shit yet. Give me another few months and it might be. Because I know that I had stated during our pods and, during my, anytime I might have called local sports radio and talking about the Bruins, I had had enough of the small, fleet of foot defensemen. We seemingly had a defensive core that were too small to stand the test of time, going into a long or trying to go into a long postseason run.
Yep.
And that was clearly not a formula that was working well for the Boston Bruins.
Correct.
You know, we had Torrey Krug, we had Matt Grzelcyk. We just needed to get bigger on the back end. Now, you know, whatever the rationale was for Don Sweeney going out to land Zadorov, which was a big fish candidate during that particular free agency period, and whether people were saying he was trying to build a team to compete against the Florida Panthers, and maybe he was. I was just finally excited that we had big defensemen to protect the back end of the house. And so at that time, we had the likes of Brandon Carlo, Charlie McAvoy, Zadorov, you know, Lohrei, who's still coming into his own. So I frankly was excited about seeing what Nikita Zadorov could bring and how much he could add. And I actually thought that the Bruins would become a defensive team that other teams would be afraid to play against.
Yep.
Sadly, that didn't come to fruition last season, as we all for a variety of reasons.
Right.
And we can't lay the blame on just one individual player.
Right.
And we won't. And I don't think that we did when we did our post-mortems. But my level of expectation, maybe, I don't know. Was it too high? Was it unrealistic?
Yeah.
I don't know. But it wasn't, he didn't perform to the level that I expected him to perform at, Nikita Zadorov, that being, until very late into the season.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest criticisms that we certainly heard, that we talked about, was, you know, his propensity for ending up in the penalty box. So I'll run down a couple of really interesting statistics, because besides the fact that he led the league and it was a career high, so personal best, penalty minutes of 145 penalty minutes this past season. That being said, certainly when you are 6'6", it can be difficult to always be in control of your body and where your elbow maybe naturally exists and another person's face naturally exists. Now, that being said, you know, not some kind of statistic that you necessarily want to lead. However, and again, this is my kind of interpretation, and I'm looking back and, you know, memory of a season that wasn't something that we particularly want to remember. But that was kind of the big thing. The biggest criticism was, why do we have this guy out there? You know, we've had our panel of experts weigh in and talk about his hockey IQ, and, you know, he's not always completing.
And I think it was fair to question
certainly
that during the course of the season. And again, we're specifically talking about Nikita Zadorov, but we could make the same commentary, and we likely will, about other players on this roster.
Exactly. And the thing is, what I think surprised me when I was kind of just going back through and taking a look at some of his statistics was, besides the penalty minutes, he was actually pretty active when it came to blocks. He had 107 blocks, which is a career high number for him. And he laid out 219 hits. That's not a career high for him, but it's the best he's had in 6 seasons. So I think you have to remember to kind of look at some of the bigger picture that, yes, he had a ridiculous number of penalty minutes. Yes, if you look at it in another way, a lot of those penalty minutes were coming much, much earlier in the season and did sort of temper a little bit more as the season went on. Maybe you can chalk it up to, he even said so in his exit interview with the media, there's a lot going on. There's excitement about being on the Bruins and you're trying to fulfill this role on the big bad Bruins. And then you've also got your refs who are, they're always going to be enforcing.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
The rules a lot more stringently at the start of the season as opposed to the end of the season. But what I think was particularly shocking to all of us, because I know when this stat first dropped on the pod, we had to take a double take, was his plus minus. And I know this is a personal favorite of yours.
It is.
He had a plus 25, which is astonishing. That's a pretty good plus minus for any player at the end of the season. But considering he was leagues ahead of every other player on the team, was just a shocking statistic. And so I want you to indulge me for a minute, and then we will get into the other stuff that you want to talk about, certainly about him. But I had to dig into this because that made no sense in my mind. From all the conversations that we've had about him, he's a good player, but he's not a crazy elite defenseman. He is not Charlie McAvoy. So that didn't make any sense in my mind. And the thing that I realized that often happens when folks just look at the stats and they just look at a number and they take it and they run with it. You have to remember that of all the defensemen, he played the most games. He played 81 games last season. Charlie McAvoy played 50 games. Lindholm played 17 games, okay? Peak had 76. Lohrei had 77. Carlo had 63 on the team. So I looked at all of these guys, and including Yoki Harju, who played 18 games, because I was a little bit curious about seeing what he actually was bringing to the table. And when you look at their plus minus, and you kind of adjust the plus minus for the amount of time and the games that they played, and you kind of even it out, even that playing field out. Charlie McAvoy's adjusted plus minus, so he ended the season with a 0, which is neither good nor bad, right? He finished with almost a plus 22 when you kind of average everything out and make it all relative. Zadorov finished with almost a plus 2, 1.76. And that makes so much more sense to me. And when I discovered that, I was like, okay, that explains everything. Because again, he played all that extra time. He played all those extra games. He took on more leadership. He was more involved because he literally had to be, because he was the only veteran defenseman available to be there and be out there, So that also changed some of my perception of him. But I want to hear from you about more of the, let's say, soft skills, off-ice things that he was bringing now to the table, especially after the trade deadline. Because that's something that you've talked about that really changed your opinion on him.
Yeah, it just seemed to me that, once the dust settled from, a monumental change in the construct of the Boston Bruins roster, when you deal away your captain and a bunch of, core players,
Yep.
it has to leave some type of a mark on the rest of the room, right? In terms of trying to figure out, okay, where do we go from here? Who's stepping up? Who's leading? And for me to not only see Zadorov's on ice game improve, but for him to be stepping up as a leader and spokesperson for the team, understanding, that there's no McAvoy there. There's no Lindholm there. There's no more Charlie Coyle. You've got basically David Pastrnak as the last man standing in terms of, someone who had, a structured leadership role because he had an A on his shirt. And then just his level of play in terms of, all of a sudden we're seeing like maybe a light bulb go on for Zadorov, understanding that, look, not only do I have to, be a better player in the room, I need to be a better player on the ice. And I actually enjoyed watching him play at the tail end of the season, thinking, well, this is the guy that I thought we were getting from day one, right? The hard to play against, the, punishing hit, even getting involved to some degree offensively. Like, who knew that he had the ability to bring the puck and rush the puck up on the ice and jump into the play offensively? All things that I think, from a going forward perspective, he needs to really continue to build on from there, because he is going to be very much needed in both, that leadership role and that player role this season for the Bruins. So, I'm not a fan of, sometimes we have a tendency in the Boston sports circles to have an expectation of a player. And when that expectation doesn't immediately come to fruition, right? Unfortunately, that player becomes a marked man, so to speak. And, in this instance, I think with this, what happened last season, I really don't think that it's fair and justified, because last season was just a lost season. It didn't start well from the beginning. Did it end a little bit better? Yes, maybe for individual players in terms of like, okay, we're liking what we see from these guys together. We're liking what we're seeing from Zadorov, both from a leadership standpoint and a, a play standpoint. So, I think a refresh and a restart this season, my expectation's going to be like, I don't want to see you going back to what we saw at the beginning of last season, which is, you're taking stupid penalties. They're just, some of them were silly, and he wasn't alone. The stick infractions with this Bruins team is problematic. Okay. That's just laziness. That's being caught out of position, but you can't go back to the Nikita Zadorov that we saw for the first handful of months of the season.
Yeah. I think for me, my expectations have changed a little bit. Keep in mind, I don't necessarily think that he is, again, this elite defenseman all of a sudden, right?
I agree with you.
Yeah, let's remember, I can't remember if it was one of the very last games of the season, and they were playing against Carolina, and he just screwed up a pass literally in front of the net, and it went straight in.
Cost them the game.
Quite literally cost them the game.
It cost them the game. And again, it sounds like I'm being an apologist, and I'm not. He wasn't the only one that we had instances of that. Yes, but that was just the lowest of lows at that
Right.
point for
And I
the
think,
team.
I think the biggest point that I want to make, and kind of the motivation behind us revisiting this signing in particular, is resetting, at least for me, my expectation of him as a player on this team. Kind of going into it with eyes a little bit more wide open about what he is, what he's capable of. Am I going to expect him to not make those kinds of plays? Like, no, he's going to make those plays. That's who he is, right? We've talked about it ad nauseum with Mo on the podcast, and we've talked about it just in general throughout the past season. He's going to make these
Boneheaded mistakes.
These mistakes, whether it's because he's being a lazy player, quote unquote lazy player, because he doesn't want to, take the long way around,
Mm-hmm.
or he's, just suffering from, again, boneheaditis, where he's just not got the IQ that day. And he actually thought that was an appropriate pass to make, but, and I'm not necessarily going to say, hey, it's okay that he does it. Like you said, an apologist, but there are so many other things that he seems to be able to offer the team.
Riley Herbst from 2311 Racing here, and you know what grinds my gears? Waiting for coffee. But instead of counting frappes and lattes, I fire up Chumba Casino. No apps, no fuss, just fun social casino games to pass the time. By the time my coffee's ready,
Order for Riley.
I've already taken a few victory laps. Next time you're stuck waiting, make it entertaining. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
That we just, I think, started to get a glimpse of. And maybe that's something that comes with age, because, in his particular career, he's been bounced around a little bit. He's spent some time in Colorado, but he was younger, right? And so this is now an opportunity for him to be in one place for a stretch of time. He still has 5 years on his contract with a no trade clause, at least still right now. And again, he's older. He's 30.
I would like to think this is his, right? It could be his last stop. Stop.
Yeah.
And
this is him maturing.
Yes.
Is this him taking on a role that, like, it finally makes sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Where,
no, I do know
when
what
he
you're
was
saying.
25 years old, he didn't know enough.
Listen, anyone who starts in the Buffalo Sabres organization is screwed from the beginning, as far as I'm concerned. No, they're screwed from the beginning. Sorry, but there's enough documentation.
Yeah,
now
there's enough there. So, I think I have both. This is going to sound very contradictory. I have both higher expectations and more tempered expectations of him going into the year, right? I'm expecting him to take on a leadership role, whether it is, if the Bruins organization decides to go back to kind of the way things had been for the last few years, where they've got a rotational A letter, I would hope to be seeing him get one from time to time, because that means that he's providing leadership guidance, or that he, takes on that really good spokesperson role. I thought that he had been doing a phenomenal job in that regard, post trade deadline. And my tempered expectations again are around, okay, he's going to make costly mistakes. He's going to cost this team goals or whatever. But can he make up for those mistakes by using his physicality in a way that we know he can, right? Is he going to be able to tap into that?
Yes.
And I want to see that. So that's kind of where I'm at with him.
I have a question for you, though.
Yep.
Because, we have a new coach, and we're going to do a profile on Marco Sturm at
Mhm.
a later date. But do you
Yep.
have any concerns about transition and how that will impact specifically Nikita Zadorov
Hmm.
with any type of change in systems that the Bruins are going to play? Because we have heard, right, whether it's true or not, or whether this is what will happen, is
Mhm.
that they want to go back to being a hard team to play against.
Yeah.
Which means that starts from the back end of the house
Yeah.
and works its way forward.
Mhm.
I myself am a little concerned about that because I don't want to sit there and be watching, having to win games by one goal, right? Again,
Yeah.
we've been there, done that. But
Yeah.
okay, be that as it may, if that's
Yeah.
where you're going and that's what you want the identity of your team to be, because we
Mhm.
were all screaming last year for the team to
Right.
have some kind of identity, of
They
which
didn't have
was
one.
none other than they were a shit show. That was
Yeah.
their identity. They were a shit show.
Yep.
Do you have any concerns about him having to kind of reestablish his level of play and how long that might take?
Yeah. So, yes and no. I think first and foremost, what I think the when I think of Zadorov and how do you get the best out of somebody like him who has been he's notorious with the reputation of being uncoachable, right? Like he's just going to go out there and he's going to do his thing and it doesn't matter who you are as the
Right.
coach. He's like,
He
I'm
likes to
just going to go
freelance, right?
I'm going to
Yeah.
right, I'm going to be
Yeah.
me and I don't care, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think about because I do think he is he showed at least again in the last weeks of the season that he is actually a very good teammate. You know, he proved that in how he conducted himself in interviews and the way that he spoke. So I don't know if this is again now something that could change because he is maturing and he's, seeing this bigger picture. I wonder if he's the kind of person who, again, not to always keep going to Jake DeBrusk because that is like ancient history, but
Who?
yeah, right, exactly. That one guy who used to, uh, he was the type of person who, you had to put in a challenging position in order to give his best, right? He was so up and down when he was on those lower lines, and then he gets moved up to the high challenge line of being up there with Bergie and Marshy, and then he just exploded, right? I wonder if we will see our best out of Zadorov if someone is giving him, again, a very specific job of you have to be a leader in X, Y, and Z way. We are expecting you to be a leader in this way. It's maybe a personal challenge of being in that leadership role. And I kind of would assume that he's that type of person that will then thrive on being in such a challenging role, whether it's, again, personally challenging because he's being pushed to be this leader in the room or on the ice. And I suspect that's the kind of person he is, the kind of player he is. And as long as that challenge is still there for him, regardless of the coach, regardless of the system, I think he will still give us the best that he can give. Again, tempered expectation that I fully expect him to still go and do whatever the hell he wants to do on the ice.
Well, I mean, I'm not opposed to, any athlete on occasion doing a little bit of freelancing if the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah.
We
Sure.
clearly know that there was a lack of structure to start the season for the entirety of that roster.
Yes.
Wherever that breakdown happened, we all saw it. We all knew it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and I hope that, now that you have identified your next coach,
Yep.
you seemingly have identified how you want to play,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then putting this to me is key.
Yeah.
Putting players in the appropriate roles to succeed with whatever you want your structure to be.
Yeah.
Because this roster is what it is right now. It is not going to change.
Right.
We don't believe that it's going to change between now and potentially the
March.
following season, right? Or March, right?
March.
And depending on where they are, right?
Right.
I think we're going to learn a lot about this team in the first couple of months of the season, if not sooner, because they've got a murderer's row of teams to play to start the season. Very elite top teams within their own conference and in the Western Conference. So I think we're going to learn a little something about this team. But I just want players like Zadorov, right? Because you have made the investment in them. Okay?
Yeah.
Put them in the appropriate and best roles to get the most out of them and to help them succeed.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting, again, I listened to last year's player profile, and we were very excited about him coming on to the team, hoping that he would take some of the pressure off of McAvoy.
Yes.
To
That's what we
allow
heard.
him.
This means Charlie's going to have to do less. Charlie should be able to kind of, flourish a bit with offensively. And it didn't take long for Charlie to get pulled off quarterbacking the first power play unit in the very first game that Lindholm is quarterbacking the first power play. He goes down with a serious injury.
Right. Yeah. And we also kind of thought about, is he going to play with McAvoy? That it would be a really good pairing. Obviously, that turned out to be not the right pairing. But we also discussed, having Zadorov play with Peak. And actually I thought that pairing was very, very good. It was a good.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on chumbacasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at chumbacasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's chumbacasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Matchup for the most part. But I think as long as he is given a very, very specific job and a very specific role, I think again, and this is, you're going to see this in every part of your life, in every kind of job. There are some folks who can exist without requiring a very black and white job description and job duties, and other people who need that structure and that outline.
Do this.
Correct. And I think he's, again, like I said, you're going to put him in a role that is challenging enough, because I think, again, if it's not challenging, whether it's quite literally challenging on the ice, challenging off the ice, maybe you won't have him quite as engaged, but it's clear that he sees himself as part of the new leadership core. Yeah. Whether or not he has a letter, that doesn't matter. It's very obvious that he sees it,
because we've seen that on Boston Bruins teams in the past, where there have been, Patrice Bergeron had the C on his jersey for a while. Was he the most vocal guy in the room? No, he was not, from what we've heard. Right. Someone else was a little bit more vocal than that. Right. Which is fine. Those guys exist. You need them in your room.
Exactly. So but I do think he's the type that needs a very clear job description.
I agree with you.
And hopefully
he clearly needs that structure too.
Yeah.
Because what we saw at the beginning of the season was and rightfully so, you're questioning the wisdom of Don Sweeney having signed this guy.
Right.
For, however many years we signed him for. Like, what the hell? Like, because now maybe the signing was based on, don't forget, he was traded from
Calgary to Vancouver.
Calgary to Vancouver, and or vice versa. He had a very short stint in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Very good playoff, but
Yep.
that was a very small sample size.
Right.
Very small sample size.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, we had questions and
Yep.
challenging, like, what the hell? Is this really it? Who is the real
Mm-hmm.
Nikita Zadorov?
Yeah,
And I
please
think,
stand up.
no, really, that with the real Nikita Zadorov, please step forward.
Right.
I am hoping that the real Nikita Zadorov is who we saw at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I mean, and this goes without saying, but there are a lot of players on this team who will have, I think, a little bit of an extra, microscope on them to see, okay, you've just experienced arguably the worst season of your career, whether, not necessarily statistically, but like that was personally very difficult to experience. How are you going to respond? How are you going to start the season in training camp and in that first month? I think that first month is going to be super important. And I think he's one of them. He's one of the ones that I'm going to be keeping an eye on and watching very closely to see how does he approach this particular
He's
season.
not alone. And we'll likely be talking about those players in other segments, but there should be a motivation factor and a factor of pride.
Yeah.
Huge factor of pride, because what happened to the Boston Bruins last season is nothing short of something that hasn't been experienced by a Boston Bruins franchise team in a long, long time.
Very long time.
To be talked about as, in the hockey circles as one of the worst teams in the league is not Boston Bruins like at all.
Yeah. No, I had even blocked it out of my memory that when I was looking at hockeyreference.com today about the season summary, it said finished 8th in the Atlantic. And I was like, oh man, I forgot about that. Oh, that's you forget that that's what happened, that we were dead last.
No, I have not forgotten. And again, fairly or unfairly, I'm going to be looking to see, like, what happened last year is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And we cannot let that happen again. Now, does that mean, they're off to the races? No. But you need to play with a semblance of pride, determination, effort, and giving it your all.
Yep. They have to play the game the right way.
Great.
So no small task.
No small task. No. People are going to think we're nuts.
So as a final kind of wrap up and final thoughts on Zadorov, are you feeling positively? Are you looking forward to it? Are you feeling, tentative? What is your kind of overall feeling about him being on the team, being on the roster, moving forward for the next season?
I'm feeling tentative still, only because, one of the reasons is because we haven't seen or heard how Marco Sturm is going to handle this roster.
Yeah.
And what type of game that they seemingly want to play. So I do still have some hesitancy and tentativeness on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be the biggest question mark, is how do any of these players respond to the type of coach he is? And this is his first, time really in the big shoes, right? He's been assistant and associate coaches, both at the NHL and lower levels. And so this is his kind of first go at it too. So, and for a team that he played for, which is going to be an interesting dynamic. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing yet, but
And
we'll
my
talk
other
about that another
concern
time.
is too, when you have core players that are
Mm.
leaders that are out of your lineup for extended and long periods of time. And then you see other players such as Nikita Zadorov who have stepped up. He really did step up his level of play, his leadership. My other concern is, Lindholm, McAvoy, when they come back and they're healthy, does he then start to become deferential? Or will he continue?
Right.
Right. Will it be a collaboration of
Right.
leadership?
Yeah, exactly. What's that dynamic going to be?
Right.
I don't know. But only time will tell. So as a little preview of the players that we're going to be talking about, obviously, we're going to be talking about Tanner Jeannot and, returner Sean Karoline and a couple of the brand new folks, Arvid.
Forgive me for my lack of enthusiasm.
But we will bring on, of course, the professor who knows all things in and out about hockey IQ. And so to really give us that perspective is always an interesting side of everything. So we'll be talking about those guys in the month of August. And then as September gets here, we will talk about our new head coach. And before you know it, Maria, it's going to be rookie camp. It's going to be training camp. And boom.
We're back
We're in
at
it.
it, folks.
So,
we'll be back at it.
So not too much more until the hockey season. But thanks again, Maria, for a lovely conversation about Nikita Zadorov.
I always enjoyed chatting with you, Karoline, the K. I mean, and it's nice we have this opportunity to just be chill. We're having these chill conversations.
We'll be stressed out soon enough.
I'm not really sure how many chill conversations we'll be having when the season starts in earnest, but
exactly.
Let's hope.
Well, make sure you help us reach other fans, especially during this downtime, by leaving a rating and a review. Make sure you subscribe to find out when all of our posts are out. Check out our Patreon for some special content and our regular, publications on our Substack at Tape to Tape MK. And as always, go Bees!
Go Bees!
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.